What's up, people, and welcome to another episode of Developer Habits. Today, I'm going to talk to Olga Shatokha, who's a recruiter who's worked in big companies like Pipedrive and Printify to help them scale up and hire more developers. This interview is also special to me because Olga is the person that gave me a chance to become a professional developer. I'm going to ask questions from my developer's perspective so you can find out things like how to stand out as a developer, what are the questions you should be prepared for when going to an interview, what are the qualities that recruiters look for when they are hiring, and how maybe you can improve your portfolio. I genuinely believe that this is one of the most useful interviews I have ever done. So with that said, let's jump into the conversation. Hi, Olga, and I'm really happy to see you.
Hi, Ketmar. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today.
Yeah, yeah, it's so weird to talk to you in this format. Um,
Yeah, me too. So now it's you interviewing me. You
yeah,
see?
yeah, the roles have changed. But maybe you can talk about your background, who you are, and what you do, so that our listeners could get to know you a bit
Yeah,
better.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm kind of bored of defining myself by different titles, so I'm just gonna say I'm really passionate about recruitment. Originally, I'm from Ukraine. So in Ukraine, I like my first job. My education wasn't connected with HR recruitment. My first job was actually in a web agency where I have been doing like copyright writing and translation of texts. And at some point, I was just asked to assist with hiring people and developers. And I realized that this is something that really fulfills me because before I used to think that I'm kind of very introverted kind of person and I could never imagine myself working with people. But once I tried, I was actually surprised that, I feel accomplished when I hire a person, when I see how this person fits into the team and how ultimately the job that I hired the person for makes the life of this person is also better, right? Because we spend so much time at our jobs. And then from there, I switched my job. I joined one of the most prominent until today tech recruitment agencies in Ukraine, where I spent 4 years. At first, I was junior recruiter, and then gradually I progressed. And before I left, I managed a team of recruiters and also help to manage clients and some organizational challenges, let's call it. So that's how I got into recruitment and HR.
One thing that I immediately wanted to ask, you mentioned the word introvert, and jumping into this HR world. At the moment, do you still see yourself as an introvert by nature, or is it something you've just understood that okay, maybe I'm not an introvert and I like to talk to people and help them in that sense?
Yeah, well, I still cannot understand what I am in that sense because they say that, introverted or extroverted is more where you get your energy from. So sometimes to kind of renew my batteries, I have to be on my own and just read a book and not meet anyone. But sometimes I really feel like I have to be among people. And of course, sometimes I burn out, sometimes I have 8, 10 calls per day, but still I feel like this job fulfills me. So maybe I'm kind of like introverted extrovert or extroverted introvert, like they say.
I can really resonate with you here because well, I see myself as an introvert because I need my alone time. I get energy by being alone, but I also enjoy being around people. And so it's like I don't know how to define myself.
Come on, you have a YouTube channel, you cannot call yourself introvert anymore.
Introvert who's an extrovert. Okay, okay, but I also know you were in Ukraine or working in HR in Ukraine for 4 years, and at some point you moved to Estonia to
Yes,
Pipedrive.
yes. Yeah, actually, I got a message from Ragnar Sass, one of the founders of Pipedrive, and also many other things in Estonia, right? And like I was referred to him like somehow through like some common network, and he wrote me about this job in Estonia, and I'm like, what? And then I was like, okay, you know what? Like out of curiosity, I'm just gonna talk to these guys. And then like a few months after, I ended up moving to Estonia and joining Pipedrive because like it sounded like an amazing opportunity, and I visited Estonia and I really liked it. So yeah, I mean, I moved to Estonia and I spent 3 years at Pipedrive and Estonia. It was absolutely like defining time for me, for my career, for my personality. Um, my mind has broadened so much because of moving to another country and experiencing living in well, very similar but still a bit different culture to Ukrainian, and also working in a very international company, and of course joining a rather early stage startup at that point. So yeah, that was like still amazing time of my life. I was absolutely pumped from what I was doing at Pipedrive, the kind of people I was working for. I was absolutely madly in love with everyone I used to work with. And at Pipedrive we had um, this challenge where we had to scale, but at the same time keep our cultural standards very high. Um, we tackled it by having very kind of rigorous interview process, but at the same time it was fun both for us and for candidates. Like our interview style was very unconventional, I would say.
What do you mean by
um,
that?
I mean, we were asking questions like, for example, we had like person in the team, Kair, who used to ask people like, "Hey, do you believe in aliens?" And then you could see, it's like so much like ego proof, because a lot of people got defensive with some questions and aggressive and so on. So it was kind of very bold way of interviewing people, but at the same time we were building this kind of no assholes culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we were hiring people who kind of put others like before themselves. And I think that basically by building together the interview process, the questions we ask, the way we talk about Pipedrive with hiring managers, that was kind of like a teamwork for all of us. And I think that our interview style was like a big employer brand for Pipedrive, actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, from my from my own experience, I can say that I think there were like five different interview rounds, if I remember correctly, and like the filter in the first interview round was already so great because I recommended it to some people that I knew that sometimes were like really good developers. I had worked with them during freelancing, for example, but they didn't get through this first round. So it shows to me that that cultural side was really important, but it cannot just be the cultural side, right? So can you maybe talk about the balance between those
Mhm.
two, the technical skills and cultural sides?
Mhm. Sure. I mean, it depends so much on the context. Sometimes, of course, the team simply cannot afford hiring junior developer just because there are like so many things in the backlog, and basically the team is small and it doesn't have a capability of like close mentorship. So in those cases, of course, we have to go for both the cultural fit and the hard skills. But normally, I mean, if the startup has grown already, then it is possible to allocate some time to mentor junior person, or to find some tasks for this junior person to tackle while the others are busy. So I would say really depends on the situation, on the team, and the stage of the company. Um, of course, usually companies that I work with right now, they want to see someone at least more or less in their stack. I would say that I personally see that people like hiring kind of uh, technologically agnostic developers, right? If we're talking about engineers, because people who stick not just to some language, but there are also people who I don't know, stick to some like very specific JavaScript framework and say I will never ever write code in anything else. That's kind of like that tells something about them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like on the culture side, that they don't have a very flexible mindset. And if you're building a startup, then you want people who are more resilient and who are more adjustable into the environment because I'm not the one to tell you that things like change so fast at startups. It's like Alice through the looking glass that like to stay in the same place you have to run really fast, but to be somewhere else you have run twice faster as that. So that's true story of startups.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can say from my own experience, right? I remember when I was going through the interview process in Pipedrive, I had been freelancing for a really long period of time, and to I got through the first interview round, and the second one was already I had to do the homework in Backbone JS, which I knew was this not. I mean, it wasn't that popular anymore, and I was like, oh, why do we have to use this Backbone JS? Why won't we using React JS? And well, fortunately, I got hired eventually, but it was in the startup environment when I started to see that actually it's not the language or specific technologies. It's, as you said, being able to be agile, learn new things, and basically just change the whole course if it's necessary. So what you just said kind of validates what I've analyzed about my background.
Yeah,
But I
nice.
still have to ask regarding juniors. It's if startup has this resource to mentor them and kind of invest in them, then it makes sense to me that one should invest more, maybe even to the like cultural fit. But what about senior developers, for example? Is there something different?
For senior developers, actually, in my opinion, it's so much easier to hire senior developers than junior. Actually, not hire, but interview, because with juniors, it's like you never know. There is no track record there that we can look at, right? And especially interns. There's just kind of like our gut feeling about the person, which might be or might not be true. With seniors, it's kind of easier because you already see the track record of the person. You see the CV. Uh, you see kind of like more or less mature specialist. You understand the motivations. You understand the reasons of changing jobs previously. So you have some history to rely to. That's for me. Interviewing senior candidates is usually much easier to kind of understand if they are a fit into the company or not, both culturally and in terms of hard skills. And I would say for any type of professional, it's really important to invest their time and effort into learning, to kind of stay on top of the things. I would say to at least once per week to watch video, listen to some podcast, read some article, newsletter, a book, whatever. Can be product related, can be more like engineering related. But it's really important that even if I'm senior, I still keep myself up to date. I'm no, I'm not like no know it all kind of
Mm-hmm.
guy. So or girl. So that's really important for me from the like it also tells how good is a professional.
Mm-hmm. That's a good advice, and to all the listeners, remember that you always need to learn and growth mindset, as we say in this channel.
Yeah.
Um, when I was thinking about the things that I would like to ask you, I finally like came to three different steps regarding hiring people. Uh, and one of those first steps is actually making yourself visible as a developer. Can we maybe jump into this topic a bit more detailed way? Like, what are the things that both as a junior developer and also as a senior developer one should do in order to kind of stand out to recruiters?
I mean, if you apply to a job, then keep in mind that, and I'm being like super honest here, and that doesn't tell anything good about all of us recruiters, but we honestly spend like 10 seconds max on screening the CV. So keep it short, keep it like one page, and just think, like, look at your CV with the eyes of a person who has 10 seconds max to decide, if we're going to move forward or not. I mean, it sounds like very rough, but that's just how it really is. Um, However, what I personally pay much more attention at is the cover letter. So if there is some cover letter, that's already like a huge plus for me. That the person has actually like invested time to research something about the company and to write a letter, and then I expect it to be more personal. So I had tons of cover letters that said like some other name of the company, or some other position and so on. And of course it was like disappointing, because I understand if you're in active search for the job, like tens, or I don't know, maybe more like companies that you send your CV and cover letter. But I also don't want to feel that you don't really care about like where you're sending your applications to. So I think it's important to write cover letter in a way that you know personal. It's about the company, it's about that job, it's about how your experience might matches that job. So it doesn't matter if you're junior or senior, like that would be totally like a thing from my standpoint that I would proceed with the candidate.
Mm-hmm. Um, it's always been like my understanding that firstly I want to say the fact that you said you don't spend too much time on one single CV. I mean, it's kind of understandable because you have to go through so many different people, and there has to be some kind of filter that makes people stand out, as I understand. But like one thing I've always suggested people to my listeners is to, especially if you are a junior, to do side projects and write, I don't know, blog posts and kind of go this extra mile to stand out. So when let's say you apply to somewhere, maybe the recruiter has already heard about you because, you are out there. Is that an advice you agree with, or how do you look at it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I mean, pet projects is like really important thing as well. So at Pipedrive, we always used to ask, do you have any like pet projects? And I mean, GitHub is a great way to stand out, because if like we recruiters know already what GitHub is, and we know how to see if you have a good profile on GitHub. So it is a way to stand out, to make some repositories for your hobby projects, pet projects, and so on.
Mm.
Definitely, yes. Because I mean, like writing like additional, doing like extra work, like writing a blog or like a YouTube channel and so on. It requires like a lot of extra effort in like additional to coding, but you can just like put your code out there. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be already like a big thing.
Regarding regarding the CV, I understand that cover letter is something that if you really want to get to a specific company, then better invest that time and make it like company specific. But regarding CVs, are there any like really specific advice that you could give to other people out there?
I would advise to keep it more or less one page, to make bullet points instead of kind of long sentences. Because the way we scan is more like, it's not so horizontal; it's more kind of vertical. And yeah, just to bring out the most important information, to cut out spam, like, I don't know, hobbies unless they're like programming related, qualities such as responsible, efficient, and so on. We are all that on paper, okay? So I would say just like keep your education, your experience, and like main contact information. I don't need to know your apartment address and so on. So that would be kind of like keep the gist of it there. But of course, if there are like some specific projects that you want to dive deeper into, then you can kind of make a project description after a CV and send it additionally, so that I would see kind of the profile on the first page, and then is going to be like elaborated about the projects. Because sometimes of course it happens that some engineers, they don't invest time in CV at all, and you receive this like super like blank CV with just like, I don't know, years and place where this person worked at, and that's it. So this is not what I'm talking about. It's nice to talk about your projects, but don't talk about them on like five papers or something.
Yeah, I guess this is something you can talk about during the interview. But what about we also? Well, you also mentioned the word education, and it's like especially nowadays there are like tons of different courses, and the amount of self-taught developers is constantly increasing. Is there some like specific distinction that you make when looking at CVs? Let's say a person who hasn't studied IT but maybe has studied some other field, or how do you use education to filter the CVs if you do?
I don't really use education to filter CVs. It's always curious for me to understand how the person got into the profession, right? Just like from the personal even standpoint, right? Like what is it like for them in the profession that they are like decided to do it, or like keep doing it. It's like when you asked me in the beginning how I got into recruitment in HR, so that's kind of like the same thing. But no, I definitely don't filter candidates based on their education. I think it's recently Elon Musk said that you can have a degree but still be an idiot. So that doesn't tell me anything about the person really.
I have to agree here. And like based on my experience in Pipedrive, some of the smartest people around me didn't have a degree, and it was kind of this validation that actually if you want to learn something, it doesn't have to be coding, it can be whatever. You can just, especially nowadays when there's so much information out there, you just have to do it, you just have to get started. So I'm really really glad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And actually, if the person without formal education made an effort and is self-taught, then I absolutely, respect that. I'm not saying that I would prefer this person over the person with the formal education, but that would be kind of like a nice thing to have.
Hmm. Okay, but okay, so we spoke about the CV part and basically like getting to the interview. But now let's say that it's the first interview coming up, and you have to go there. I've seen and heard people coming to interviews who aren't prepared at all. Let's say you go to an interview and you don't even know what the company is doing. So because of that, I want to ask this question: what is it that someone who's going to an interview should know about? What are the preparation steps, and yeah, what can a developer do to increase the chance of succeeding?
Mhm. Well, you definitely have to know what the company is doing, that Pipedrive is not producing pipes, right? Or drives. Anyways, yeah, I think that like you have to do your basic research to understand like what the company is doing, what the product is about. If you're interested, I would be interested to understand where are the offices, how many people are working there, what is the like if it's a startup, what is the stage of a startup, what is the funding, and so on. Because All of that tells you how stable is the company. Essentially, I would strongly advise here that if there is a free trial for the product, then you should definitely try it out before the interview. And if you will somehow show, not by showing off, but you will mention that I have your trial and I tried this and that, and how about this and that, maybe ask some questions, then it's like a huge plus from the employer standpoint.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting because again, my memory with Pipedrive. I remember before stepping to the building, I was cramming the founders' names. I was like, okay, two Martins, two Martins. But it's I don't know. It seems, from my standpoint of view, it seems weird of not doing that kind of preparation, is because it's like basic knowledge, at
Yes.
least from my standpoint. And what I've been to a few interviews, and the first interviews, um, where I've been to, also like spend lots of time talking about the business and how the product works, and I felt like, okay, but I've already done this research, or already know this. And then this feeling of, okay, I need to show off, I need to show them that I know the product. And so it's this fine line of wanting to show what you know, but um, not being seen as someone who wants to show off,
Mm,
if you get what I mean.
yeah,
Like a really
absolutely.
fine line.
Yeah, I mean, usually people ask what you want to know about the company. At least I ask in my interviews. So I give the opportunity to the person to say like, okay, I know already this and that, so maybe we can like, I want to jump to like what my tasks will be or what my team is going to be, right? But I think at Pipedrive we had so many cases of like people not actually knowing that, because I mean, when I started working at Pipedrive, right now of course everyone know it in Estonia, outside of Estonia, and so on. But when I started, it was like relatively small company, 70 people, most of them in Estonia. um, it's not Skype, it's not TransferWise, it's B2B, kind of very niche product that you cannot explain into words to, I don't know, anyone on the street how it works. So people might have heard the name, but they were totally unfamiliar with the concept. So we kind of trained ourselves to present Pipedrive in the best way. So I guess that's why it was like this. But coming back to the candidate standpoint, again, you can try to kind of interrupt the interviewer kind of gently if they're like talking like a really long story and you really understand that like you know it all. um Sometimes you can just let them speak and say that like actually I know already a lot about the product in the end. Like it's like you should orient on the station and how you feel, so there is no kind of like a magic pill here.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say that, let that interview flow as a natural conversation, but knowing from my own experience, it's really hard to do, because you're being screened, and the feeling, knowing that something really depends on this conversation. So it can be really stressful.
I would say to cope with the stress, of course, if you're a junior person and you really want this job, it's going to be hard, but try to think from another standpoint. Think not about, because at Pipedrive we thought that, like you said, you went through like 5 interviews. We thought about it not just for us to get to know you, but also for you to get to know us and decide for yourself if you really want to work with us and all these people that you're meeting. Because if I had just like one interview with the company, I have no idea. I only met one or two people, right? So in that kind of setting on the interview, think, do I want to work with these people? So try to watch, try to be curious about them as well, not only about how you look, but also notice how they look, how they tell things, how they can potentially collaborate with you. So this kind of position of the viewer, of the watcher, is I think it's a bit more meditative and calming for the candidate.
That's a really good point, actually, and a really good advice to all the listeners. So I'm like really harshly switching to topics here. Let's talk about the red flags. Like you interviewed hundreds of people. What are like some kind of heuristics or red flags that tell you, okay, maybe this isn't the person that we are looking for?
Well, once we had candidate who came drunk to an interview, so that is a red flag.
Oh, whoa.
That is a red flag, yeah. Maybe if we would have been drunk as well, that would be okay. But we weren't. There was kind of a mismatch of the expectations. Yeah, but like kind of on a serious side. So I mean, I look at two things in the candidates besides the requirements and cultural side. So soft skills wise, I look if the person is really passionate about what they're doing, passionate because they really like what they're doing, and is the person a good teammate. So that are kind of ultimately two things about a person's culture, and I look for them no matter who I interview and for who I interview. So I did the same at Pipedrive. I am doing the same for my clients. I did it in other companies, and if I look for somebody to join the agency, then I'm doing the same thing. Because this is something that speaks to my personal values, and this is something that I cannot not screen, if that makes sense. So on the passionate side, it's important for me that yeah, the person is passionate about the job, and like I mean, there's nothing wrong about like being passionate about money or being motivated by money. We all are. That's like basic thing, but it shouldn't be only that. You know, it shouldn't be like the first question candidates ask you is like how much you want to pay me or something like that. And because if person doesn't really care what they're doing, I don't think I want to work with this person. I don't think I want this person to work for my client or like the company that I'm working with. And regarding the like good teammate, well, that's a bit harder because I think what startups do a lot is that they try to find people, especially like small startups, like small companies, or maybe sometimes very immature teams, they try to find people that they want to like go out with or like have like beers on Friday with or something like this, and that doesn't scale. Right, so your teammates cannot be all your friends, and you have to understand that there is something like in between of just work and friendship. How I try to test it is to understand, would I be okay if we would go to, well, pre-COVID times, okay, on a business trip with this person, then would I be okay to get stuck like for 6 hours in the airport with this person or not? Because this is something like in between kind of personal and professional, but it's still kind of a good way for me to test if I'm okay being around this person. So I don't think it's nice to work with people who are defensive, who are aggressive, who are very egocentric, that everything is about them, good and bad things. And I mean, on the interview, it shows up very easily. Sometimes, you know, like I once asked a person developer, do you believe in aliens? Thank you, Kyle, for the question if you're watching this video. Because like she showed some like showed something that I thought I cannot remember right now, that were kind of like, you know, orange flags for me. And I thought, okay, so this is kind of the ultimate question for me to test her out. Does she have at least like a sense of humor about it? And she said, yes, I think I saw an alien. And this is you. And she pointed at me because we were with hiring manager in the room. And because like you are so weird and your interview is so weird, and you know, and I was,
Oh, whoa.
Thank you for your answer.
Oh wow.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
those are the
I mean, obviously I cannot imagine like being in the. You've been through so many different interviews with different people and probably seen really like many different situations. But yeah, well, no, but I actually um, I was in an interview like before Bike Drive. I was uh, doing an interview to become a graphic designer, and actually one of the founders also asked me like, "Do you believe in aliens?" And it actually had been some joke in the media like a couple of days ago, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I read the same newspaper." And he was like, "Okay, okay." But why I'm going more into this topic is because different companies ask different questions, and I know you've already mentioned that sometimes you try to poke in those, put in those, how do you say, different kind of questions. Can you maybe tell a bit more about that? Why do that, and what are the kind of things that you're screening there? Although you already mentioned a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that like aliens question is a must or something. It's basically I wanna kind of shake the person a little bit, not necessarily by making them uncomfortable, but asking something which is outside of the scope of a normal interview and see how the person would behave. Because I mean, again, it's still job related because as we just discussed before, in startups there are so many like unexpected situations that you have to I don't know keep your face, keep your decency, and yeah, being adequate to the situation. So what other questions I can bring up? Not me, but different hiring managers were asking like how like what is a computer, for example, or how internet works. I would say here sometimes they were not really explaining why they are asking this question, and the candidates were like a bit defensive. Um, Still, I think at the end of the day, it was good to ask this question because that was a specific personality of the hiring manager. So if the candidate felt like uncomfortable about this kind of way of asking questions, then maybe it's like a good thing that they didn't end up working together. But in general, I would say, yeah, it can be like those questions about simple things, like very obvious things, but not so obvious really to explain in like uh, words how the simple thing like a computer works or like internet works. Like I could never explain, for example. Um, and yeah, there is like there are those questions from like Google interviews. How many tennis balls will fit into this room, or how many windows are there in Manhattan? I would say those questions are not good or bad. Hiring manager has to, or like interviewer has to know why they're asking those kind of questions, why they're checking them. But usually, if they ask them, they want to check your logic, right? So if I'm asked how many windows are there in Manhattan, then I'd be like, actually, first of all, you can ask, can I Google?
Hmm.
Can I use Google Maps? Can I use, I don't know, something statistics calculator and so on? So no one prevents you from that. Um, and yeah, basically, so if I'm asked this question about like windows in Manhattan, I can start counting. Okay, so Manhattan has this amount of streets, this amount of avenues, and roughly this amount of blocks. And roughly there are like X amount of houses in the block, and houses height is approximately this amount of floors, and it means approximately this amount of windows. So if you multiply all that, they want you to elaborate the way you're thinking about the
Hmm.
subject, right? Usually those questions are not for them to catch you, so like I saw people are freezing at those questions, and this is a bit strange to me because like aliens question, okay, it's a little bit, like I'm dragging you outside of your comfort zone. But yeah, this kind of Google like questions, they're just like about the logic.
Hmm. So it's actually just problem solving question,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they want
absolutely.
to see how you approach problems.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. It's I think I didn't have it, but I have colleagues who have had those questions, and it's really interesting actually to see how they responded. Some like try to approach it really creatively, and exactly one of the things maybe you should ask is what kind of information can you give me, like maybe some specific numbers, or can I use the Google and do my own
Yeah.
research and so on. But these are also like all the kind of questions developers have to ask every day, like what kind of information do I have in order to solve a problem. So i i,
Yes.
I can see the necessity of it.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, I think I've got my questions answered, and I'm really really thankful for you. But I'd like to talk a bit more about you. Like we use Pipedrive as the example, but
Mhm.
there are other things you've been up to.
Yeah. So do you want me to like elaborate my career path after Pipedrive and where I am right now?
Yeah, why not? Because I know briefly, but
Yeah, so basically after Pipedrive, at Pipedrive, I felt that I want to try something else. I was missing sunshine in Estonia, and I felt like moving to Portugal. So I got an offer in a tiny startup in Porto to be kind of HR generalist person. So that was also something new to me. And I decided, well, why not? I'll give it a try. And so after 3 years, I left Pipedrive and I landed here in Portugal. Unfortunately, the startup was very early stage and it just didn't make it. So we like we or like them we had to gradually lay off all the team. And here I was, like in a new country, in a new city, without knowing almost anyone, with not a lot of savings, just lost my job. And I'm like, oh my God, like that was like a super dramatic moment in my career. And I felt like I took like a very wrong turn. And basically I tried to, so what I did, I connected with all my professional network in Estonia and also in Portugal. And I said, hey, this is the situation I'm in, and I'm up for any kind of projects, freelance, part time, full time, you tell me. So I after a couple of days, I signed my first agreement with my first client, and in like a month or so, I actually had so many projects that I couldn't manage them on my own. Um, so yeah, I panicked my way out of out of the situation, I guess. And I started collaborating with different freelancers, recruiters to help me with these projects. And one of them was Katya, my old colleague and friend from back from Ukrainian days in the agency. And she joined me soon full time. So we worked together for about a year, and then one of my clients back then, Printify, they offered to join them, well, almost full time in kind of HR slash recruitment related things. So I joined Printify a year ago, and basically I became kind of go to HR person for everything. We had just a team of 80 employees and two HR people who were running operations. And right now we are a team of 300 employees. So we grew twice in 1 year, and
oh
the
wow.
HR is about 12 people right now. So I kind of I was implementing some kind of basic onboarding and performance reviews things, but I stuck mostly to the implementing recruitment related things in the company and building the recruitment team because of this huge scaling, of course, because this year we're looking again towards like 3 times scaling, and we're looking around something close to 1000 people potentially by the end of this year. So that was something I dealt with most of the time, and then kind of managing the rest of my clients. So that was like a very interesting, very challenging year of my career, despite
Yeah.
the COVID and everything.
Can I ask about the challenges, especially like the scaling? Because I can see the similar pattern between you in Pipedrive and you in Printify, like a company that wants to grow really fast. Like,
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I scaled Pipedrive by 150 engineers in 3 years, which is approximately like 50 engineers per year, and that seemed crazy to me. But now I'm looking to Printify, and I understand that that was like, almost like a kindergarten compared to what we're doing right now, and it's totally blowing my mind. I think the challenge is again to keep the bar high and at the same time scale. Also at Printify, we are hiring people in multiple locations. So we hire basically in the whole EMEA region remotely, and also we have big office. So this is a challenge, and now in these times we cannot allow everyone to like physically allow, I mean, to visit Riga or to meet your team. So sometimes you are the only person in your city or in your country sometimes working for Printify, and of course the challenge for us is kind of to bring these people on board with the culture and with the practices how we work. So I think this is kind of the next challenge after scaling, and definitely not the less important one.
mm-hmm. um, but how? Okay, let me phrase it that way. What are the places you go to find those developers that need to be skillful, but also need to have this cultural fit, especially when you want to grow fast?
Yeah, I mean, we try to simplify our process at Printify a little bit because of the scaling. So it doesn't have like 5 interviews; it has more or less like 3 interviews in the process. Um, so we again, like, we look here for more senior people because we hire outside of the headquarters, and the person is supposed to get onboarded at home with like someone like online, a manager or a teammate, explaining him how or her how things work. Then we look for people who have some experience of working remotely, or maybe some more senior candidates. I hope that at some point we will be looking for more junior people and giving them opportunity as well. But right now we have to grow this backbone, to be able to onboard and mentor new people who are more junior, and kind of explaining them like what are the best practices to get onboarded if you're working on your own and you don't have anyone necessarily physically next to you, because this is kind of the next challenge that we all are facing right now.
Yeah, and well, I've done my small research, so I know that Printify isn't the only thing that's going on in your professional journey at the moment. I just saw that you opened your own agency.
Yes, finally.
By the way, the website looks beautiful, and the logo is also really cool. Like, good job on that. I'm definitely gonna add a link in the description of the video.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, so me and Katya and some freelancers that we collaborate with, we've been working for 2 years together, and having all these amazing clients and these amazing projects, and like our hands were kind of full. We didn't feel like we need to necessarily like launch a brand and the website and invest our time and effort into that. But then after 2 years, it's kind of already like, come on guys, let's do something about it. So yeah, we launched the agency, which is called Bee's Knees, which almost sounds like business. And yeah, we work with startups, sometimes very early stage, sometimes later stage, sometimes they're not startups and just already kind of growth stage companies. We obviously help them to scale, to recruit people, but we also do a kind of audit of hiring processes. Sometimes something is not working, and they want us to take a look into how they work. We train teams of like hiring teams and interviewers how to make interviews in the best way. We also do pipeline management, where you have applicants and candidates, and you need to kind of filter them out and help hiring managers to offload them. So yeah, this is something we've just launched. We actually looking for teammates into business. So we look for both junior and senior recruiters. We are super flexible. It can be full time, it can be part time, can be some projects that we're collaborating on. If you're junior, we definitely ready to mentor you and to teach you. And yeah, that's where we are right now.
That's a really amazing journey you've been through, and finally, I know that, like, doing this basically when you published the website, it was a big accomplishment. To, I guess it kind of like made it official. So I'm really glad to see that. As we are running out of time, and I just want to ask you one last question before we say the goodbyes. I usually ask developers, like, what's the one habit that has made you a better developer? But in that case, I'm going to ask you, what's a one habit you believe has made you a better recruiter or a head of talent? Or
I think it's calling my parents every day.
can you elaborate?
Yeah, I mean, they are definitely making me more human and more sensitive and more understanding. And I think this is what all of us need, but this is what you definitely need when you work with people. You have to be very like, sometimes HR, which stands for human resources, sometimes they're not that human. Many people know that, I think. So for me, it was important to be in human resources and still to stay human, if that makes sense. And I think my parents have been helping me immensely, just like, always supporting me and being there for me. And yeah, so I think that makes me a better person ultimately. I don't know, maybe you want something like more professional for me to mention.
No, it really resonates, but it made me think that I should call my parents.
Yeah, because it's been almost 6 years soon that we don't live in the same city and in the same country anymore. So for me, it was very important to kind of still be close to them in a way.
Yeah. And I mean, here, I just want to say to the listeners that this is one of the things why I'm doing this developer habits, that there is also a life outside of computer and outside of our programming interfaces. So it's a really nice reminder.
Yeah,
And
if you want, dear listeners, you can call my parents.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know what to say. I feel it's been really educative, useful. It's been super awesome to talk to you. And as I said before, you played a huge part in my career. And I'm really happy to see that now you have your own agency. And I really believe we were able to provide some useful content for other developers out there. So I'm genuinely thankful for you agreeing to do this podcast.
Ismar, thank you so much. I was actually kind of, anxious before doing this, but I enjoyed this so much. And yeah, long time no see.
Long time to see you.
And I just want to tell you that, like, you were definitely one of the brightest people I've ever known, and I've definitely ever hired. So thank you so much for just being there.
Oh, thank you. Anyways, thank you, Olga. Thank you to the listeners, and I don't know. See you in the next video. Bye.